Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Becca, and I'm a sophomore in the Austin Scholars Program here at Merrimack College.
And I'm Maddie Marucci. I'm also a sophomore Austin Scholar, and today we are joined by everyone's favorite fun nun, Dr. Dorie Mansen.
So, Dorie, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and how you ended up at Merrimack and a part of the Austin Scholars Program?
Hi, ladies. Well, thank you for having me today. And that's a really big question. And sometimes I have no idea how I ended up here, frankly. But honestly, I was a professor at BU. I taught at BU School of Theology for a bit, teaching biblical languages. And then I took a little break to work in youth ministry and young adult ministry in some parishes in the Archdiocese of Boston. And so when I decided to come back to academics after taking a little time away to spend some time with my family and work in parish life, I ended up at Merrimack working with the Austin Scholars, which is really fantastic because it's kind of a combination of both my academic interests. I'm a biblical scholar, so I'm a professor in the religion department, as well as my interest in forming community with young adults. So Austin Scholars is really an amazingly great fit for both interests in my life.
Awesome.
What first sparked your interest in biblical study?
Oh, great question. So I was a theology major at Boston College, and my freshman year, first semester, I was in a class, Introduction to Biblical Studies or Biblical Heritage or something like that, and I was frankly dreading it, and I really didn't want to study the Bible, and I thought it was going to be ridiculous and just all this ancient, old, boring stuff. And frankly, within about a week or two of studying the text, I realized that studying the Bible, particularly Old Testament, was really just this very cool ancient soap opera with intrigue and death and murder and sex and all these fascinating, interesting things, in addition with people trying to figure out the meaning of their life and where God fits in. So I just found it fascinating. And fast forward many years later, perhaps a couple decades later, and here I am, still fascinated by the stories in the Bible.
Honestly, I feel like that's kind of similar to a lot of like freshman Austin Scholars, where at first you're not sure about like what's going to happen when you start studying the Bible, but then you start realizing like actually how interesting it really is.
Right. Well, even though it's this ancient document or collection of ancient documents, we realized pretty quickly, and I think you guys figured it out when we were studying it together in class last year, that the people in the Bible are humans, just like you and I, and they're trying to figure out their lives, just like we try to figure out our lives. And no one has the exact right answer yet, but we're all working on it together. And so the time and the space difference between the ancient world and the people in the first century, and suddenly with us in the 21st century, hanging out at Merrimack, it shrinks a little bit because we're all just part of this human community trying to figure it out together.
So, what is your favorite part of Austin Scholars?
Oh, what's not to love with Austin Scholars? Well, you know what? The Austin Scholars are really amazing because it's almost becoming a cliche, but what Austin Scholars is really about is building community, right? So you guys build community in the classroom and in the dorms and in our community events. You build community across the campus, and then certainly in your service to the greater community in Lawrence and Lowell and the region. It's really about building community. And as much as it's becoming cliche, I really think that's the truth, and that's my favorite part. And every year, I find the Austin Scholars as a group is figuring out how to build community in even more vibrant, interesting ways. And this is so true in our COVID world right now that we're in. Sister Jean and I were nervous about how service was going to happen and what community events were going to look like for Austin Scholars. And suddenly, with the creativity, we found out that building community the way that Austin Scholars does is more important than ever. And you guys are doing it in creative ways that are so important right now in this crazy pandemic reality that we're living in.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like almost service will mean more to the community and everyone else this year than it has in the past because people really need that connection right now more than ever.
Absolutely. And we've realized that we're all vulnerable in some ways, right? And so how do we serve each other in our own community, and then those people who are already in vulnerable populations, to be able to find resources, even if they're virtual, digital resources, we're still trying to find resources to serve each other. I think you're right. Like, I think it's really, really important and necessary.
So that being said, about everything going on with the pandemic, are you guys still feeling nervous? Are you more excited and ready for everyone to start service? I know especially the freshmen, they haven't done it before, so it's definitely going to be different for them this year. But I think it will really mean a lot for them to get the full aspect of Austin Scholars through starting service.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that we're doing with the freshmen, which is different, and we're doing it out of necessity, frankly, is the students are taking a full semester to learn about the service sites. So the freshmen have already signed up for service sites, so they're already creating that relationship. But they're doing some research and doing some, deep dives into the, internet and websites of our service sites, and kind of investigating all the dynamics of the service sites together, so that when we're allowed to leave campus and when we can actually go and serve, all of that learning curve will have already happened. So rather than kind of taking weeks to get the lay of the land and try to figure out what this organization is already about, they'll know all the nuts and bolts. So it's out of necessity that we're taking a semester to learn about the sites, but I think it will actually be helpful in the end. And what's fantastic also is that the sophomores and juniors, the upperclassmen, they're serving as doing some virtual service with the service sites, but also helping the freshmen as service learning liaisons to get to know the communities that we'll serve. So we're not only reaching out, but I think we're reaching out beyond Merrimack, but we're certainly reaching out to help each other.
I actually think that's like a really positive silver lining of all of this, because at least in my experience with service learning last semester, like it was super important to understand like the community, and sort of because their community is so different from my own personal community. So like to best serve them, it was really important to understand everything about them. So I think that's super important for the freshmen as well to be able to do that.
I think you're right, Maddie. I think this actually will find out lots of silver linings that we can find in this whole situation. I mean, there's been so much pain and sickness and illness and negative things that have happened as a result of COVID-19, but that doesn't mean we can also find some positive aspects and things that we want to learn from it and take forward.
Exactly.
Definitely. I think like the reflection that Austin Scholars like we do together, like that helps all of us find that silver lining, which is super important during this pandemic. Realize that.
I hope so.
So what do you think that the Austin Scholars Program has provided you, both personally and professionally?
Oh, good questions, ladies. So, well, I think personally, as part of how I got there, is that I had this career aspirations to be a professor in religious studies, and I did my dissertation and I did some teaching, but then I was really missing ministry. I was missing working with youth and young adults, so I took time off to do that. And Austin Scholars provides a great bridge between both things that I love doing. It's also, I love the fact that all of you Austin Scholars have kind of embraced this crazy Mansen family as well. My daughters feel comfortable coming to Austin Scholar events. Unfortunately, not in this COVID situation that we're in, but they consider themselves like mini Austin Scholars or Austin Scholars in training. So the community really extends. This crazy Austin Scholars family has accepted my family, which is just an added beautiful bonus.
So that being said, where do you want to see the program go in the future?
Oh, well, I think that one thing that we'll start to see is to settle on the right size and dynamic of the program. The program has grown so quickly over the last few years. It really has shown that the program is serving a need for students. students, college age students are hungry for reflection, and they're hungry for community, and they're hungry to serve other people. And it's grown so quickly because of it. So what I'll be really fascinated to see, Sister Jean and I working together to see what's the right size where we can serve as many students as possible, serve as many in the farther reaching community as possible in the service sites, but also still maintain the like close-knit family feeling that we have and the ability to reflect. So I'm really curious and excited to see where we'll end up and what different directions it will take as we settle on the right size, right? And then we'll focus more on growing a program to maintaining and flourishing the program to be even stronger the way it is.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, I guess, like for the Austin Scholars for me was knowing that even though you're starting college and it's scary and all this stuff, you already have that community all set up and ready to go. And meeting other Austin Scholars over the summer, it definitely makes that transition easier into college. So I think a lot of students these days, like you were saying, they really do want that connection and they want that ability to reflect and have what feels like almost a home to them away from home. And the Austin Scholars definitely provides that for people.
It really does it. And I think this somehow you guys do it on your own. I mean, that's nothing that Sister Jean and I can take credit for within a day or two. And I think both Becca and Maddie, you can attest to that. The doors in your dorm rooms and suites are open, and you all are meeting each other and forming a family in this home away from home really quickly. It's amazing how that happens.
I think it's like almost refreshing or like a relief to know that people our age still want that and want the reflection, are willing to do the service. So the fact that Austin Scholars is growing at such a fast pace is like, I don't know, good news for the future, I guess.
It absolutely is. There's hope for humanity, right? And when things get bad, and when the news is filled with bad stories, and some good news goes off the air, which was devastating during the COVID, that some good news went away. All we have to do is look to the Austin Scholars, and there's the good news. There's the hope for the future, is that there's still good people, and good people forming community and wanting to serve each other in the world. But that's what it boils down to. That's what makes the Austin Scholars amazing. Good people doing good things.
Exactly.
That should be our new motto. Good people doing good things.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dorie.
Thank you for your time.
This was fantastic, ladies, and I'm just so proud of you guys and your role in the program. And like I said, I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.